What is going on, guys? Thank you for entering the channel once again. Today, we're going to be covering all of the changes that are coming out with Battle for Humanity, and there's a lot to cover. I think for the most part, the changes that are coming are really good, even though they're sweeping. And Attack on Titan is going to play like a brand new style of UniVersus we've really never seen before. Today I'm going to lay out all my thoughts, and I've kind of organized them into a few different categories, and you can see those down below. There's going to be timestamps to help make it easier for you to find the particular section that you want to see about. Of course, if you want to see my thoughts on everything that are coming, then just go ahead and sit tight, because there's a lot to cover. With that out of the way, let's get into the first section, which is going to be about all of the upcoming changes to symbols. Currently in UniVersus, every card, or basically every card, gets 3 symbols. And as a result of that, a lot of cards tend to not really reflect or feel like all of the symbols on their card, at least not all the time. There are totally examples of cards that will live up to all of the symbols on them, but there's also plenty of examples of cards that don't. And it's these ones that don't that create some weird situations when you start, you get enough of them, and it causes what's referred to as symbol or color bleed. Basically, because you can, you can get all kinds of abilities on cards that don't match their symbols. As a result of that, you can have decks or cards that don't really feel like the way they're supposed to. Like there are earth cards that don't really do earth things, or like air cards that do air things, etc. And that's kind of confusing for new players, and it's bad for deck building and just kind of like the gameplay experience. So the way they're combating that is twofold, it looks like. They've said exactly how many symbols are going to be present on all of the different cards, but looking at what's come out so far, it looks like characters are going to have 2, and pretty much all the cards we've seen so far just have 1. I mean, we might start seeing some cards later that have 2 symbols on them too, outside of characters, and that would be cool if we do. But yeah, I don't. At this point, everything they revealed has been mono symbol, and that means that cards are going to reflect the symbols on them a lot more. I think that's a good change. And then characters are dual symbol, which means that they're also going to be a little bit more targeted towards like whatever it is that they do, those symbols should be more accurately reflected. So I think this is good changes. The other change that they're bringing is attunement. So right now, if I'm playing like Shigaraki 3, for example, and I play him on evil, let's say, I can only include evil cards. That's going to change a little bit with these new attune cards. Attune cards are going to supersede like your deck building choices. So my evil Shigaraki deck can still include Death and Order attune cards, because Shigaraki 3 has evil, Death, and Order. So this means that, if I'm playing like a good water character, for example, let's just say, even though I don't think those symbols are in Attack on Titan, if your good water character is going to have good water cards in it, and it's going to look and feel like a good and water deck and card, should, and it's going to reflect those in gameplay. And I think that's like really cool. Color identity, as far as like player choice, is a really big deal in other games. We call them symbols, but they're effectively colors. So I think making it so that players that choose to play a certain color or symbol, they really feel that reflected on all of their cards. Or if they play a character that has 2 symbols they like, and the fact that their card pool reflects those mechanics and symbols, I think that's a really big positive change. All right, let's talk about the onboarding experience. So this is going to be a fast one. They're making a few changes to the onboarding experience that aren't going to be covered in one of these other sections. The biggest one is that there's new demo decks that I think do a pretty decent job of teaching the raw basics of the game. You get to learn about making checks, you get to learn what the enhance phase does, how damage works and momentum. You get like the basics. I think that's a good start point. I've had a bit of experience using these Sun Wukong and Hercules demo decks, and they were okay. These feel like an improvement on those, while also being part of an IP people actually know and care about, which is, it's always nice. The other change that's coming is that there's a digital tutorial that there's going to be QR codes included for like new structure decks that goes to a tutorial on Dized. That's like an interactive, like you can go through like step by step as a way to kind of help new players learn, which I also think is good. I got to mess with it a little bit at the summit, and at the time it was using the Sun Wukong and Hercules cards. I don't know if it's possible for them, but I think it'd be neat if it was Attack on Titan instead. But I know it's probably a lot harder for them to do that. But either way, I think including like an improved demo deck, I think having like access to digital tutorials, these are improvements that are going to make teaching new players, like it's going to smooth that process. And then of course we have to talk about some of the other changes that are going to be included later in this video that also elevate that onboarding process even further. So I think the efforts they're making here are like really good. Before we get into those though, we're going to talk about something that's a little more contentious, which is character rarity. Okay, so I understand that this game used to have character rarities in the past, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I don't actually know the specifics of that, other than that, like, you could have like rare and ultra rare characters, and that's like the extent of it. I don't know if they occupied your rare or ultra rare slot. I don't know. I just don't know much about it. I do know from what I've seen is that people said it was like really bad. Um, the good news I feel is that there's enough difference between where we're at right now and where we were back in those days that I don't actually know how analogous the situation is. And there's two main differences for that. And the first is that now we have a dedicated character slot, which means that, you know, getting an ultra rare character doesn't mean that you can't get an ultra rare in your pack or vice versa. You know, like, it's my understanding that they used to kind of block that. Like, if you got like an ultra rare character that was like your rare slot, like the fact that you can pull like a rare card and an ultra rare character or vice versa, I think that's going to help offset that pain. The other thing is that while they haven't said exactly like how common they're going to be, it seems like you're just more likely to get like a rare or ultra rare character than you are to find them like in other like packs or rarities. So to put this differently, like, and I'm just making numbers up, if like an ultra rare comes in, I don't know, one in every like 5 packs, let's say, it seems like they're going to make ultra characters be like one in every like 4 or something like that. I also just made those numbers, but you get the idea. Like, it's easier to see them. So between the smaller pool size, because there's not going to be as many ultra rare characters as there will be ultra rare cards, the fact that they're showing up more often, and the fact that they don't compete with, you know, your rare slot in your pack, I think this is going to be okay. At least I hope that it will. You know, the secret rare character will probably be a little bit of cash. That is what it is. But hopefully on the average, this doesn't make deck building significantly tougher, and it doesn't price people out of playing characters that they want, while at the same time making it feel neat that you pulled like a rare character. I'm really hoping that this is a success. I know some people are worried about it, and I hear where you're coming from. I just think there's enough differences here where this one might be okay. So I'm going to be optimistic. Okay, speaking of new changes on top of character rarities, we're going to move to backups, which is the new card type coming out in Attack on Titan. Alright, so backups are the new card type coming out in UniVersus, and they're kind of similar to Planeswalkers, or if you know like Bandai card games, they're kind of like Unisons. But there's a couple of key differences that, at least from what we've seen so far, that I think I like their design space better. So I'm going to assume you know nothing about Planeswalkers or Unisons, just to, you know, help illustrate. So in Magic the Gathering, there's a card type called Planeswalkers, and when you play them, they come into play with an amount of loyalty counters. It's health. And they have a set of abilities that will move that health counter up and down. Most Planeswalkers will have some kind of like super ability where they kind of have to sit and increase their own loyalty counters over a few turns. And if they get enough health to do their super ability, they pretty much win the game on the spot. These super abilities all tend to be like incredibly destructive. Unisons and Dragon Ball Super worked kind of the same way. There's a little bit more flexibility with them. They don't all have crazy ults, so it's not a perfect comparison. The thing about backups compared to these other card types is that backups, at least from what we've seen so far, don't seem to really gain health for the most part. They just burn it as a resource. And that's a subtle but really important distinction, because in these other games that have like Unisons and Planeswalkers, etc., you kind of have to kill your opponent right away, or you have to keep spending like resources on the Planeswalker or Unison if you can't kill your opponent right away. And that's less of an issue with backups because they kill themselves anyway, and their uses are a lot more like limited. So you can power through it and keep attacking the player and ignore them, and you won't die for it if you take too long. which is a huge change. And alternatively, if you hit them just like once, you can disable them from doing like their big thing, or if they do their big thing, you'll make it where they die afterwards. So I think the design space for backups makes them a lot more manageable. I know there's some rules quandaries around how they're going to interact with like things that cause damage and like getting momentum and damage triggers. Guys, we're just gonna have to wait till they update the rulebook for that one, and we can cross that bridge when we come to it. Like I can't see the future. I'm sorry. But I think this design space is similar to Planeswalkers or Unisons, while still being just unique enough that it's okay. So I actually think this is going to end up being a pretty big win, especially because as we move from Attack on Titan to other universes, it's going to be really neat to see what they do with backups as like, you know, what cards are going to become backups. I could even see like decks or characters built around the concept completely. All right, now let's get on to what I, after some thinking, have decided is probably the only negative, in my opinion, out of Attack on Titan, and it's dual face cards. Dual face cards, or I'm just going to say DFCs for short from here, are always really contentious in card game because some people like them and some people don't. And I'm kind of in the middle because I've seen them executed well and executed poorly. Magic used to do this thing where your dual face cards, you could have like basically like a dummy card. That way, like the back would be the same back as like a regular card while it was in your deck. And then when you play, like it would be like marked for what like the dual face card was supposed to be. And then when you played it, you could just have it out of the sleeve to make it a little more accessible. I don't know if we'll get that with UniVersus because it looks like there's a lot of dual face cards. And in general, I think it's just kind of like a clunky mechanic that's cooler on paper than it is in execution. Obviously, you know, we're going to have to wait and see how it pans out. But yeah, this is one that I think is going to be a miss. However, I'm going to leave this with a caveat, which is that I think that the dual face characters that you play as and include in your deck, I love that design space. So I used to be a Dragon Ball Super player big time, and Dragon Ball Super has a mechanic where your character card starts out like unpowered up basically, and after they take enough damage, they get to awaken and turn into like a more powerful version of their character. And this mechanic felt cool. God, I probably played thousands of games of Dragon Ball Super. I played it constantly through COVID. So like I'm sure I got like hundreds if not thousands of games online, not even counting like in person over webcam, and it always felt neat to like meet my awakening condition and flip my leader over and power up. Like, and I think that's been captured really well here with like some of these characters that turn into Titans. Like they start out kind of tame, but then as the game progresses, they turn into like a really powerful character. That design space, I mean, we can talk about power level of individual characters, but that's kind of separate from the mechanic as a concept. Conceptually, I think the mechanic is great. I'm just worried that it's going to be kind of clunky when it comes to regular cards. So overall, I gotta say this is probably like my only negative out of Attack on Titan, but there's a caveat with the characters. I think it's like 2 thumbs up. I'm super excited to play with like dual face characters. All right, now let's get to my closing thoughts. Outside of everything we've covered today, the only thing I have left to talk about really is the art mostly. I think they've done an incredible job with what they've been given. The original manga, and again, they actually showed us some of this at the summit, so I'm speaking from like a tiny bit of experience, was actually just like roughly, like for lack of a better word, just roughly drawn. You could tell that the author was still kind of coming into his own, and that's reflected a lot in the card artwork. And I'll be honest, some of the commons and uncommons, like they're a little rough. I think the rarer cards look good. I think the changes to make cards that like they look like their symbols. So like the air cards have a lot of blues. The fire cards have a lot of like reds and oranges, etc. I think that change is awesome. It's going to make decks feel even more like whatever symbols that they have in them. And I'm always going to be like 2 thumbs up for that. I think that's always great because again, people care a lot about what symbols they're playing, symbol identity, color identity, whatever you want to call it. A lot of gamers really care about that. The one thing I'll leave on as a teaser, I won't say details because they haven't come out yet, But guys, I'm telling you, some of like the chase alt art versions for some of these like characters and cards are out of this world. Like the lows and floors on some of the Attack on Titan cards are a little rough because the source material they're working with is rough. The highs, like oh my god, like you guys, man, you don't know what you're in for, but it's real good. I can't wait to get to talk about it. That's gonna wrap up today's video though. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments down below. And if you made it this far, consider liking and subscribing. I really appreciate that. Once again, thank you for entering the chamber. I'm going to catch you the next one. Bye, guys.